Ladies and gents, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Landlord Page podcast. And this week, excited this week because we've got soon to be the new host. Because me and Mike are lonely when we're in here as a two. Sometimes we need a third wheel just to help us get through the episode.
Councils are under pressure to meet housing numbers. Okay, they're given a quota over the next 10 years. They've got to do X. So I think that it's not going to impact anything. It's still going to go fast pace on developing it from scratch and creating these new sort of neighbourhoods within the area.
So excited to announce that Andrew Brown, this is a get to know you episode. We're going to find out all about you, get right stuck into exactly what people that are listening want to know. But first of all, are you Andrew or Andy to the listeners?
So I prefer Andy.
Yeah,
I'm known by Andrew, but yeah, Andy preferably. That'd be better. Andrew's a little bit too sort of posh.
Andrew to your mother, Andy to everyone else.
Andrew when I'm naughty, Andy when I'm not.
Yeah, love that. So we're going to get into your background in a second. I know, Mike, you've been waiting weeks and weeks and weeks for Andy.
Impatiently, as everybody knows. Yeah, so we brought Andy on within AvocadoProperty to absolutely change how our landlord offering and our lettings offering works. So comes with a huge history of different background options and working with landlords and developers as well. So it's a really exciting progression for AvocadoProperty and hopefully a lot of value onto the Landlord Page podcast as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure there will be. And I mentioned off camera, one of the questions that I wanted to fire at you was, I'm interested to know how different the London rental market is in comparison to the sort of home counties or outside of London, because you could go London and then just outside, couldn't you? I know you could go north of the border and say that's a little bit different as well. But now you've had the background and experience in a couple of different ways. But how different is it in London to everywhere else?
Very different. In regards to rental prices for one, sort of within when you're in sort of the London area, you're obviously paying a premium for any type of property compared to when you come further down south. So it's I mean, for a 2 beds in London you could be paying £2,000. For exactly the same property down south you could be paying £1,200. It's just that type of market. I think with sort of applicants and tenants that you tend to find in London as well, they tend to be sort of professional tenants, your tenants that are coming from overseas. So yeah, they don't mind paying the increased rental amount. But yeah, and especially landlords as well. Landlords in London, obviously their properties are worth, quite a bit more than what it would be down in the south. So again, that sort of tends to be what demands the premium rent. And it's obviously the area as well. Central London, you got everything around you. So yeah, it is different.
Is it as crazy hustle and bustle as you think? For someone like me that's never worked in London, I nearly did once actually, but I didn't go for it in the end. But for someone that hasn't and just visits every now and then because it's the anniversary of the wife or whatever, and we're going to watch a show and have some dinner, but it does always feel like hectic. And I could just imagine working in it, especially as a letting agent.
Yeah,
it must be crazy busy.
It is. It's crazy. You got when you're there, everywhere is busy. It's never a dull moment in central London. Everyone's doing something, and it's just hectic, especially with working as a letting agent as well. So you could have quite a lot of properties on your stock register because there's a lot there, and then you're just going in and out different properties all of the time. Your applicant database in London is vast. The applicants all going for the same property. It's crazy. You could have 50 applicants to one property.
Sounds like what it's been like for the last year. It's been like that in London for the last 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say it's what it's becoming here, where you have high earning professionals who are either choosing to rent or they're renting for specific reasons now in this area, because rents have flown up over the last 2 years. We're almost seeing that same sort of attitude. Like you say, 50 people to one property isn't unheard of
No.
in the southeast now, where it used to be.
Mm.
And it used to be people either coming in on contract work or maybe moving out of home for the first time, or people who couldn't afford to buy. Now, quite often, our tenants earn more than our landlords do.
Yeah.
Because of the specific reasons. They're either investing in their business or
Mm.
they're just long-term renters now,
Mm.
where 10 years ago or longer, that wasn't socially acceptable in the southeast. To be
Yeah.
a long-term renter, it was weird. So
Yeah.
no, big change that we've seen here since COVID. Maybe another one of those ripples from London.
Yeah, and I think that's the shift that you're seeing, is that, everyone wanted to be in London before, because you've got everything there. Everything was going on. But, if people see that actually, if you come further down south and you were in Reading, the trains get into London, fast train,
Faster,
20, 23 minutes, 24 minutes. Rentals in Reading compared to in London, you probably get a lot more for your money down Reading way. So people are starting to sort of slowly realise that and say, why am I in London when I can get a 24-minute train
It
into
would
London and
it would take
save
me
money?
longer to commute to Reading, living 11 miles away, in
Mm.
24 minutes on rush
Yeah.
hour time
Yeah.
than it would me living
Yeah,
in Reading,
absolutely, yeah.
driving,
Yeah.
training it into London, which is crazy. But
Yeah.
it's a good point to why that ripple's happening, I think. So talking about your London career then,
Yes.
what year did you start in agency?
So I started in agency February 2012. So coming up to 11 years in the industry now. So I started off in Isleworth as a lettings consultant.
Did you live in London then? Or?
No.
No. Okay.
So I lived in Lightwater,
Right.
Surrey way. So I started off in Isleworth letting as a sales negotiator, sorry. And then did that for 12 months. And then I sort of looked at the lettings industry and thought, wow, there's so much going on in the lettings side of the industry. There's probably a lot more that you could learn on the lettings side with regards to legislation elements, and sort of process wise, you sort of got a lot more involvement, because with lettings, you could progress a deal yourself instead of in sales. A sales progressor might be dealing with that. So on the letting side of things, I decided to make the switch and go into the letting side of the business. Did negotiating, became a manager of an office, then jumped into the support side, so dealing with the renewals of the tenancies, property management, tenancy management, licensing as well, which I'm surprised I got into, because there's so much with regards to licensing in London that it's just crazy. And then worked my way up. So it was working for a London estate agent, managed to get to sort of director level with the support functions of that business. Then came down to sort of southeast and in the Woking area. I worked for another large estate agency down here, looking after 6 or 7 offices, and sort of progressing the letting side of the business on them. So I'd like to think that I've got a vast knowledge of lettings, with the different sort of disciplines that I've been involved with, and sort of can give that advice
To the landlord.
to landlords, to anyone really that's thinking about lettings, and having that all-round experience in different elements.
Tell us about the reason why you moved out of London, because I think that story is a powerful story. It's interesting, and hopefully you won't mind sharing it. But
No.
It's very common in our industry, I think, especially for dads, and I think mums have their own scenario, their own problem, which is common in the industry, which is they build a career, they have a baby, and then they can't get back in on any level of salary, which is a disaster. But it's different for the avocado mums that have come and started their own businesses. It's not an option elsewhere. But for dads that are in the same scenario, we get used to being agents and working 6-day weeks, sometimes 7-day weeks, long hours. You might even finish work, do the gym, get home, go to bed, and repeat. It could be as simple as that, couldn't it? And then kids happen, and that's where things change, right?
Yeah, that's where it changed for me. So I've got a 6-year-old daughter now, and mum works full time as well. She's got a high position, within a business in London. So we were both sort of flat out at work, doing the hours, and with our daughter, we had to sort of rely on after school club, breakfast club. Have to rely on parents looking after the little one as well. And sometimes I wouldn't get home till 9, 10 o'clock at night, from London. And the whole thing that started it off for me, moving from London, coming back down to where I am locally, is my daughter. I remember my daughter turning around to me and said, "Daddy, I never see you. You never see me doing, reading or writing or playing games or anything like that." So that's what made the change for me, because family is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So, and you never want to miss those moments, especially with your kids, because those are the memories that you're going to have and that you're going to take away with you. So, and you want to create those memories for your kids as well. You want them to go to school and say, "I was with my daddy last night. We did X, Y, and Z."
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I transitioned from London back down. It's better work life balance. You've got to be there at every opportunity for your kids. The mum is still flying high in London, but she's thinking the same thing as me. She doesn't want to miss those moments either.
Yeah.
So it's a complete change where before you thought I've got to work flat out to get somewhere to get where you want to be. But look, it's modern times now. You don't need to do that. Like I said, family is the most important thing. You've got to make time for your family, and whatever you need to do to do that, you've got to do. You've got to take the jump. It's scary, but the benefits of it outweigh anything else.
Yeah, I think it's a real key lesson for the industry, because it is. I think it's getting better. I mean, when I started, it was like pretty much 8 till 7.
Yeah,
pretty much every Saturday. Now I think in most agencies, most of them are finishing at 6 or half 6 latest, and a lot of them are doing way less weekends than what we all used to. A decade, 2 decades ago when we started. So I think it's getting better, but. Yeah, it's good to have you on board. It's good to have you and your opinion as well on the podcast. So I think what we want to talk about a little bit now as well is, what have you done for the last 12 months? Are you talking, before you were sort of the back end making the processes work? Now you've been kind of going after and having conversations and meetings with more developers and things like that as well. Big investors.
Yeah. So over the last 12 months, I was a regional director. Where I was looking after the 6 or 7 offices, but sort of made the move into more of a build to rent sector role. So a PRS director, so dealing with developers, investors that are building these multi-unit, places where majority of it's professionals that sort of rent these units. But in these units, you've got concierge, you've got gyms, you've got barbecue areas, you've got cinema rooms in some of them, and really that is looking to take off over the next 2 or 3 years. More developers building these sites. You could get 300, 400 units in these sites, and that's sort of the way that it's going, that these developers are going to do. You're going to get a lot of interest from applicants, because professional applicants, especially because they want a place like that, because they've got everything on site.
Cool. Really cool.
It sounds brilliant. It's amazing, some of this stuff that you see, and when you speak to these developers and the plans that they've got, it's just incredible. It's incredible what they do. So when I sort of looked into that and made the switch into dealing with this area, it was amazing to see what they do, the way that it's going, and dealing with these multi units. I just had an interest in it. And there's like I said, it's going to take off. There's going to be a big market for it. So as an agent, you want to be involved with that for two reasons. Because obviously, one is providing that housing there, and normally the rent levels on these are quite reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
In many of these developments, they provide affordable housing as well, so giving something back to try and meet the housing demands of the local councils, and obviously dealing with these developers, there's big business there as well. So it's a lot different to what you would do for a normal letting, because there's a lot more involvement, a lot more. You've got to get involved with planning permission, signage, all of that around the site, which is not something you really do on a normal let. So it builds up your knowledge of the industry, and like I said, it's taken off. It wasn't really a massive talked about thing a couple of years ago, but now, because everyone is talking about housing demand and all of that sort of stuff, these developments are going up quick, and they're all being rented quick. There's a massive demand.
A lot of it's been in the change of planning for commercial to residential development has allowed it to sort of open up to these investors and developers. I'm interested to know if you think it's a two-paced market, because if I look at these developments in London, and if anyone's been to Wembley in the last 2-3 years, you'll see how and you went 10 years ago, for example, you had the stadium, a retail park, and a couple of stations, and just wasteland around Wembley. Whereas now you walk down Wembley Way and it's just 25-story towers everywhere, and a huge percentage of those are built to rent. And as you say, it's concierges, it's swimming pools, it's gyms, it's apps for the residents to get together and co-work,
families
and
as well, like weatherproofed parks and things like that.
Exactly. So there's a real purpose behind them to create a local neighborhood. Is that going to ripple out? Because what I see in the southeast and outside of London at the moment is potentially, well, we've got this office building, we can convert it and rent it, and that's maybe the end of the thinking. It's not at the same level of thinking as it is in London. Do you think it's two-paced, or have I got the wrong impression?
No, I mean, I think with the commercial units, converting it to residential, obviously that's quite an easy thing to do, because you can just convert it, and there's not really a lot of outgoing costs to do that. It's still a massive cost to it, but doing that compared to a cost of building it from scratch, it's obviously massive. But I think with the sort of areas that we've got of land that are doing nothing, okay, so every councils are under pressure to meet housing numbers. Okay, they're given a quota over the next 10 years. They've got to do X. So I think that it's not going to impact anything. It's still going to go fast pace on developing it from scratch and creating these new sort of neighborhoods within the area. So I can't see a massive difference on that. I still think that it's going to...
You think we'll see the quality that they're producing?
I think so.
Inside the M25, outside the M25?
I think so.
I think it'll come from the international investment.
Yeah.
I think, the likes of your national developers that maybe are not looking at it, maybe a little bit more archaic in their thought, which is, we can build that townhouse for 87 grand wherever we are in the country, do more in the south, make a nice 30-40% margin on the residential sale of it. But I think the international investment, funding builders to go and do it, which is potentially what's happened in London with international investing businesses, I think that's definitely something that we're likely to see. And I think then once you've not exhausted, but once the opportunity in London has been taken advantage of, which maybe is underway at the moment, then you start to look at your Ripples, then you start to look at your Readings, and you start to look at your Birminghams, and you start to look at the Manchesters and the Liverpools. And if you keep it down south and you look at things, you look at places like Brighton and areas like that, where it's just maybe people rippling outside of a really strong university into that type of rental property, because that would be perfect. You were talking the other day about was it a 1 or a 2 bed flat above like a fish and chip shop in the back end stairs, like the old school parade of shops, and you got a couple of flats above, and it was 1,200 quid.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal. just blows your mind. Like, you're living above, I don't know what it was above. It might have been either an Indian restaurant, a Herbie's, or a Pizza Hut. I don't know what's better or worse.
Something's being ordered somewhere.
But is the old fashioned maisonette with a metal staircase, and in the Reading postcode is £1,200 a month to rent. So there's a margin, a wild margin, like the new house builders are seeing, of ability to go in and put something quality up and charge a fair amount over that in order to get their return back. Definitely.
Yeah.
But you see all, I when I was dealing with developers in my previous role, they were talking about what they plan on doing, where they're getting these sites, what they're going to create. So their motivation is there to create these super amazing buildings where, again, it's got 200, 300 units in, bang in the centre of everywhere, close by to everything. So they will be doing that. So you're just going to see an increase in what they're doing. Other companies that you see these news articles on build to rent, where they've just done an agreement for £150 million to create this, four different stories of units, and in that you've got Starbucks coffee and all of that sort of stuff. So you're still going to have that quality there, and they're just going to keep going with it. That's what I said. Every bit of land you see will probably have a building on it, over the next X amount of years.
Well, there's enough land to go on. I can't remember the stat. It's Andy Mead that deals with the new homes element of things for Avocado, but I'm sure he said something along the lines of 2% of the land is covered by golf courses and 1% by residential homes.
His favourite is that there's more golf course, more land is built on by golf courses than properties in the UK. So whilst we have our population constraints compared to other countries, it's a bit of a myth that there isn't any space left. Yeah,
you can see it when you go. I drove to Leicester this week, and I'd say it's a 2.5 hour drive, and it would probably 2 hours and 10 minutes of it was driving on the motorway with land left and right of me, and not a lot else. I saw the odd sheep, and that was it, really. So well, as people can tell that's listening, we're going to be able to cover loads with having you as another host of the show. We've got some awesome people lined up in coming weeks as well. We've got people talking about physical health and almost using food and different types of things around business to be at optimum performance. We've got someone covering that. We've got a land consultant coming in that's going to be talking about what's going on with the land market at the moment and some new opportunities that are arriving in the land market as well. We've got someone coming down that's going to be a specialist in the Stevenage area, and we're going to talk about Stevenage as a spotlight investing town, because we feel that ripples very similar to a lot of the towns that we've seen real good successes for buy-to-let landlords in as well. So there's a couple of episodes that are coming up, and welcome to the show, Andy.
Right, thank you all.
I'm flicking through YouTube and through Spotify. I don't think there's a podcast or a video channel on YouTube that landlords can land on where they're not being sold something.
I mean, it'd be the first time any estate agents ever asked that question, but why not ask that question to a wider audience?
Estate agents have the knowledge there, but they don't seem to share it.
You can do different episodes based around someone that wants an exit plan or someone that's just starting their portfolio.
The rules change every year. Yeah. But why not just open the floor out and just say, well, is property even the best investment out there?
And tax advice is a big thing, especially with everything that's changed, capital gains tax, and obviously your stamp duty costs that you need to pay and whatnot. People don't realise what they need to prepare for.
We build a podcast and we build a YouTube channel, somewhere that landlords can go and they feel they're not being sold to, but they're just getting quality advice.